You're listening to Young People Lead, a podcast brought to you by Children's Defense Fund. This season is called Bridging LA and features our Children's Defense Fund California Radical Imagination Fellows. They'll share their experiences and what it means to be heard, believed, and empowered within systems that often fail them. Let's get to it.
Welcome to Bridging LA. I'm Karina Ortiz.
I'm Dwayne Gill.
And Bridging LA is a podcast where we share real stories, real challenges, and real solutions from the voices of foster youth
and children's age youth
in Los Angeles.
Together as fellows, we are part of this fellowship designed to imagine new possibilities for our community through storytelling, advocacy, and creating change.
This podcast was born out of that vision. The Radical Imagination Fellowship brings together young leaders who lived experience in foster care, housing insecurities, and the juvenile justice system. We're using our voices to push back against stereotypes, highlight our resilience, and bring back bridges all around LA.
Each episode of the Bridging LA will dive into a different theme that directly impacts foster youth, and today we'll share our personal journeys, highlight resources, and bring in community voices so that no young person feels like they're going through it alone.
We know that challenges are real in education, housing, and the justice system, and beyond that. But we also know that we can come together, share our stories, and imagine something better. Change is possible. Again, this is Bridging LA, and let's get into it.
Dear listeners, housing insecurity has been one of the biggest battles of my life. On my 21st birthday, the day I aged out of transitional housing program, I basically became homeless. I was basically forced to take all my belongings and stuff them into bags and boxes and cram them up into a storage unit I could barely afford. It was crazy. I didn't have any support. I didn't have stability, and I definitely didn't have a peace of mind. I simply couldn't. I bounced between friends' couches, motels and hotels, and even slept in my car sometimes. Yes, some family members were there, did allow me to stay with them, but there was no real family in my family. It was always some type of problem. There was no connection, no consideration, just people who took advantage of me. At the end of the day, I was still on my own. The hardest part wasn't just losing a roof over my head, but losing the sense of safety that comes with it. Every night was full of questions like, where am I going to sleep tonight? How will I afford another ride to the hotel? How will I afford this hotel? What happens when my money runs out? Truth be told, is that actually wasn't my first time being homeless. I had experienced it before as a kid with my birth giver, but when it happened again as a young adult, it hit me very different. It was like, man, I'm here in the exact place I swore I would never end up. At one point, I even flew all the way to Georgia after my 21st birthday, desperate to find apartments because California just felt impossible. Rent is too high and competition was intense. I thought leaving the state was my only chance of what I thought was making it. But after struggling, searching, I realized I had to make something work back here in California. Not just give up. Piece by piece, I started piecing together stability, applying for programs, leaning on mentors, joining Zoom focus groups, applying to internships, and fighting to get into a rent support program that would help with any assistance. It wasn't instant, but it gave me hope. My advice to anyone else facing housing insecurity is that don't let the shame of things you've been through eat you up. It's easy to feel like you're failing when you don't have stable place or people to talk to, but you're not failing. The system has failed you. Use every resource you can find, even if it feels repetitive. Ask questions, apply for programs, send emails, leave voicemails, and don't give up when doors keep closing because other doors will open. Stability might not come overnight. It sure didn't for me. But every step forward is progress, and one day you'll look back and realize, dang, I'm really making it on my own. I have to keep going. Much love, Karina.
Hey guys, welcome back. This is Bridging LA. My name is Dwayne Gill, and today we're focused on housing and hopelessness. Okay, to help break this down, we're joined by someone on the front line shaping solutions, Victor Hinderliter. Director of Street-Based Engagement at Los Angeles County for Health Services, Housing for Health. Okay, so Victor, we're grateful to have you here today. Can you start sharing your journey, how you got connected to this work, experiencing homelessness, helping people like that, especially in this current political and economic climate?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me on today, Dwayne, to talk about this really important topic. I have been working on housing and homelessness here in Los Angeles for almost 20 years. I've worked in street-based outreach and interim housing programs or shelters and permanent supportive housing programs. I led the outreach teams for the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority for several years, and in my current role at the Department of Health Services, Housing for Health, I oversee contracts with 14 agencies providing outreach services countywide. A lot of the unsheltered, unhoused people that we are providing outreach to are transition-aged youth, young adults who have found themselves on the streets that we're trying to help back into homes, back into interim housing, and get connected to the services and the resources that they need to really thrive here in Los Angeles. This is certainly a challenging financial and political climate to do this in. And I think that's why it's even more important to get the community involved, make sure that we have all hands on deck, and we're taking every effort to try to resolve this important problem.
Got you. So we hear the numbers, but from your perspective, what are some of the root causes of homelessness today?
That is a great question, and there are so many different reasons that might contribute to an individual's circumstances of homelessness. But really, the root cause of homelessness in Los Angeles for all populations is it comes down to housing and affordability. We don't have enough housing that is affordable for the people here in Los Angeles. There are all sorts of additional factors that go into why transition-age youth and foster youth especially are experiencing homelessness at such higher rates than other people in the county. Youth aging out of foster care have such a higher likelihood to fall into homelessness because there just aren't the resources and the services available to catch them in many cases as they're aging out of the foster care system. We don't have enough resources to provide people with the employment supports, income supports, mental health supports, medical supports, or substance use disorder supports that they need to really be successful. And so we do find a lot of people falling into homelessness and needing some help and assistance to get back on their feet and back off the street.
How do institutions like foster care, the juvenile justice system, and our schools sometimes contribute to youth becoming unhoused rather than helping to prevent it?
That's a great question, and we would normally want to rely on our systems like the foster care system in our schools to be helping and supporting youth to thrive and to receive the resources and the services that they need to be able to survive here in Los Angeles County. But so oftentimes our youth are targeted by some of these systems, especially our black and brown youth, our immigrant populations are adversely impacted in much greater numbers, especially by the criminal justice system. When you see what's happening right now with the immigration system and the ICE raids, that's leading to parents being taken away from their children and leading to more people entering the foster care system, which is underfunded and under-resourced, and too often results in youth falling into homelessness at the end of their time in the foster care system. We really need more trauma-informed, person-centered solutions to address many of the barriers, many of the problems, many of the challenges that our low-income youth face, that our youth coming out of families that have suffered from intergenerational systemic racism that has really set so many of our young people back, and that aren't getting the types of supports that they need from the schools, from the criminal justice system, from the foster care system.
So, from your experience, can you speak on how black and brown communities are more vulnerable to homelessness?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great question. The numbers are really staggering. The rates at which traditionally marginalized populations experience homelessness at a much greater frequency than whites, for example, is really stark. You are much more likely to experience homelessness if you are Black, or if you are an immigrant, or if you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community here in Los Angeles. And I think that is particularly marked in our young adults. The stigma that our youth receive around their identity, for example, LGBTQ plus individuals, has sometimes leads to youth being kicked out of home, for example, and being severed from their families and from their communities. The immigrant population is targeted by federal law enforcement agents that again separates families and contributes to homelessness. We have a much higher Hispanic population experiencing homelessness compared to the white population. There are systems in place that lead to this: institutional, intergenerational racism, bias against LGBTQ plus populations, fewer economic opportunities, fewer educational opportunities, fewer housing opportunities, all contribute over time to a greater percentage of these populations, a greater vulnerability to experiencing homelessness amongst these populations. We really need to do a better job of looking at how our systems can be proactively addressing these issues to try to start to combat some of those really marked statistics where we're seeing greater proportions of those populations experiencing homelessness.
Okay, what role does outreach have? Meeting people where they are, from encampments to shelters, play a role in building trust and opening doors to housing opportunities for Tay. And what have you found most effective in helping young people feel seen, respected, and supported in navigating complex systems?
It's a good question. And the role of the outreach worker in connecting with our unsheltered young adults is really important. A lot of the times our unhoused population is distrustful of a lot of the systems that led to their current situations, and we need to do a good job of finding them, going to them where they're at, and meeting them there in ways that respect their journey in life, listens to what they say their needs are, and builds that trust and rapport to be able to then identify what services and what resources are going to be most beneficial to these individuals and begin to present options to them. We have to do a really good job of not trying to tell a young adult experiencing homelessness, this is what you need to do to resolve your situation, but really go with them on that journey and hear them and what those specific needs of each individual are, so that we can find the appropriate resource, we can find the appropriate service, we can find the most appropriate housing intervention to bring people off the streets. And we do need tailored services for young adults. Our system really does try to prioritize how we connect people to resources and services based on their vulnerability. And so we're often looking at things like, how long have you been homeless? Chronic disabilities, medical issues that someone might be facing, in order to prioritize them for housing options. Young adults who have not developed a long history of homelessness or chronic health issues yet can sometimes actually get deprioritized by that triaging system. And so we do need to identify specific interventions that are most appropriate for those young adults who might not have those chronic health issues but still need specific supports for them. One really good example that we have here in our system in Los Angeles is called host homes, where we identify families with an extra room in their home that they'd like to make available to a young adult experiencing homelessness, where we can provide that host family with a background check, obviously, and training on what it means to accept an unsheltered young adult into their home. We tie that with case management services that follows that young adult into that home, so that we can provide educational opportunities, employment opportunities, mental health services, substance use disorder services if those are needed, and really try to help that person find what is that next step. And so after 3 or 6 months in a host home, they can move on to a more independent living situation where they are in their own home, or maybe in interim housing, but in a situation where they're back on their feet and off the streets. That's been a really successful intervention that's specific to young adults, because this is a population that you often have, right, roommates when you're in your 20s, you're going to college, and so it really is a situation that tends to work out for the individuals in need of that housing intervention, and gives people an opportunity to give back to the system, and to give back to young adults who need that extra support, who need that extra help.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any specific, that actually goes to my next question, are there any specific programs or models like transitional housing, peer mentorships, or integrated mental health services that are actually making headway and offering hope to those problems?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned the host homes, which I think is a really great and successful program that we're seeing a lot of, helping a lot of young adults move off the streets and into their own homes. I think also, we have some really strong and powerful youth advisory councils here in Los Angeles. The Homeless Youth Forum of Los Angeles, for example, is facilitated by the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority and brings together a group of young adults who are experiencing homelessness or have experienced homelessness in their lives to share their feedback, share their perspective on the services they received, and then help shape future interventions, future policies, so that we're really taking into account the voice and the needs of those people who have been through that experience, and that provides our system with that unique perspective, so that it's not, you know, folks in their suits and ties sitting in an office somewhere making decisions about what programs we're going to develop for our youth, but it's really listening to people who have utilized those services, who have gone through that process to help us determine what's the best way to provide supports for other people who are going through that similar situation.
For someone who's listening, who wants to help, whether they're a part of a school, an org, or someone who just cares, what's one action that they can do to support this week in unhoused youth? And also for some listeners who may be directly impacted, Victor, what do you say to a young person right now who is unhoused, feels unseen, and unsure of what happens next?
What a great question. I'd love to start with the second part first. For any listeners who are out there who are going through housing instability, who may be unhoused or unsheltered themselves, I want to really clearly say that there is help out there. And there are folks that want to support you to get back indoors and get off the streets. If you find yourself unsheltered, you can submit a request for an outreach worker to come out and meet you where you're at, where you would like them to come and find you, by going to la-hop.org, la-hop.org, and submit a request for outreach anywhere in LA County. That request will get triaged and assigned to an outreach team who can make contact with you and help you find a solution for your situation. There's a number of agencies that are focused specifically on supporting young adults who are unhoused. And I encourage your listeners who are looking for a way to support to look into these agencies and consider making a donation, a monetary donation, or maybe putting together a toiletry kit drive, so that we can provide in-kind donations of the types of supplies that folks need who are on the streets, that these agencies can go and give out. There's Safe Place for Youth on the west side. There's Homelessness Inc. working in the East Los Angeles County. There is Village Family Services working in the San Fernando Valley. There's a number of services, a number of agencies working in each community in Los Angeles to make sure that we are providing targeted resources to young adults, so that they're not just swept into the single adults population and provided with services that might not be appropriate for them. So take a look at those agencies, find out if there's a way that you as an individual or as an organization can support them. I mentioned, again, the host homes model, which any individual can sign up for through any of those local regional organizations to get the training and the supports from that organization to sign up to be a host home. So if you have any listeners who are looking to contribute in that way, that's also a possibility.
Appreciate you for your time. This was really incredible. Talk about housing all day, but is there anything that you really wanted to lift up that you're currently working on, things we should know about?
Yeah, I would just reiterate again that homelessness is a challenge that really does require an all hands on deck solution. We need everybody contributing in the ways that they can, and it starts by learning about the issues and educating yourselves about what are the challenges and how can I give back. And so I really appreciate the time I had today to be able to talk about youth homelessness and some of the ways that we are trying to provide services and address that challenge. I really thank all of your listeners for taking the time to learn a little bit more about this, and appreciate you for lifting up this platform and making this issue top of mind for folks.
Thank you for all that. That was really incredible work, for reminding us what compassionate action looks like when it comes to housing justice. To our listeners, youth homelessness is not inevitable. It's a result of policy decisions, broken systems, but it's also something that is also able to change. You can also follow us at Child Defender 1973 and check the show notes for youth-led organizations, housing resources, and action steps you can take into your own community. Once again, I'm Dwayne, and this is Bridging LA, where we hold space for youth, justice, and a future where everybody belongs.
Hello, listeners. This concludes the Bridging LA podcast episodes. We want to give a huge thank you to the Children's Defense Fund California, along with the Radical Imagination Fellowship. Shout out to our fellows for their support. Huge thanks to Community Coalition for allowing us the space to record and for being such a strong community partner.
Deep appreciation to the Conrad Hilton Foundation for providing funding for this project that's fostering meaningful conversations that matter.